That is, today we'll discuss the urogenital system, within that the anatomy of the male reproductive system. Today we'll discuss about the male reproductive system. So these are the objectives related to your topic. So at the end of this lecture, you should be able to describe the different components of the male reproductive system, then describe the anatomy of the primary as well as the secondary sex organ. So you should be able to differentiate between primary and secondary, as well as describe the anatomy of the male external genital organs. Okay, so we'll go to these parts one by one. Okay, to begin with, we'll discuss the components of the male reproductive system first. Okay, so as we said, there are primary as well as the secondary organs. The primary organ, sex organ in case of male, will be the testis. Singular is testis and plural is testis. There is only a difference in the spelling. The pronunciation is same. Testis, this is also testis. This is singular, this is plural. When there are more than two or more, then these are called as testis. Okay, here is the organ. This is the testis here. This is the primary organ. Okay, primary organ. Then we have the accessory or the secondary organs. Okay, which includes the reproductive tract, the accessory sex glands, as well as the external genitalia. Okay, so the reproductive tract through which the secretion from the testes, that is the sperms, are carried, will be through the epidermis. This is the epidermis here. So this is the testis. From here, the sperms will be carried to the epidermis here into this. So this is becomes the reproductive tract. Then it will be carried to this structure, long tube called as the vas deferens, also called as the ductus deferens. So it will be carried all the way. Okay. Then it passes through the spermatic cord. Okay. This whole organ along this vas deferens with some of the other structures is called as the spermatic cord. Let me show you. This is called as the spermatic cord. So here, this is the testis inside. Here you can see the testis open, and here you can see the vas deferens. Along with that, there are plexus of veins, arteries, everything together. This is called as the spermatic cord. Okay. So the epidermis, then the vas deferens, then the structures including the vas deferens, that is the spermatic cord. Okay, this becomes the reproductive tract. Then there are, after primary, there are accessory, means which will assist secondary sex glands, which are those. One is called as the seminal vesicles. If you see here, this is the seminal vesicle. On the other side, it has been cut so that you can see, appreciate the folding inside. So this is called as the seminal vesicles. This is the vas deferens on either side. This is cut vas deferens so that you can see inside. Okay, so these are the seminal vesicles, which are secondary or the accessory sex glands. Then we have the prostate. This is the prostate here. Then we have small glands called as bulbourethral glands. Here we can see here just below the prostate there are small glands called as the bulbourethral glands, or also called as the Cowper's gland. Okay. Then we have the external genitalia, that is including the penis as well as the scrotum. Scrotum, this bag here, this is called as the scrotum, where the testes are present. Okay, so we'll talk about the scrotum in some more details. Okay. The scrotum, as you know, is a cutaneous pouch. So if you see here, this is cutaneous means skin. Okay, skin pouch. Pouch means just like a packet. Okay, so it is a cutaneous pouch of loose skin and superficial fascia. As you can see here, this is loose skin as well as some superficial fascia will be there, which contains the testes. As you can see here, they contain the testes on either side, right and the left testes, and parts, because the testes are in pairs. Okay. And parts of the spermatic cord, as I said, this is called as the extension from the testes through which the vas deferens and the plexus of veins, arteries, everything passes. That is called as the spermatic cord. It is divided on its surface into two lateral portions by a ridge on the raphe. In the center, there is a raphe or ridge which will divide the testis into two halves, so that there are two semi pockets within which the testis will be present. It's a big bag within which it is divided. It is divided into two parts by the raphe or ridge, which will divide into right and left, within which the right and left testis respectively will be present. The left scrotum is slightly lower than the right. If you now see, the left part of the scrotum is slightly lower compared to the right. Okay, so the left scrotum is slightly lower than the right to the corresponding with the greater length of the left spermatic cord, because this is at a lower level, the left scrotum. So always, so this spermatic cord will be longer compared to the right one. There is a dartos muscle lies within the superficial fascia and replaces the scarpa's fascia of the anti-abdominal wall. So the same fascia which are there in the abdomen will continue into the scrotum, but the scarpa's fascia of the abdomen will be replaced by a muscle. If you can see here, this is the skin. Just deep to that, there is a muscle. Okay, within the superficial fascia. This is called as the dartos muscle. Dartos muscle. So there is a muscle within the superficial fascia. It has a thin skin with sparse hairs and subcutaneous glands. So the skin here for the scrotum will be thin, as well as it will contain some hairs as well as the sebaceous glands. So what is the function of the scrotum? What are the functions, main functions? One is it houses and protects the testis. So it will house this testis. So it will keep the testis in its pouches, and it will somewhat protect the testis. The second and very important function is it regulates the testicular temperature. It regulates the testicular temperature. If you know that the testis will function properly and the spermatogenesis work properly at a lower temperature than the body temperature. Body temperature is 37.2, but the spermatogenesis will take place in at a lower temperature. So if it is in the abdomen, then it cannot have spermatogenesis, proper spermatogenesis. That's why this testes are outside the body in a bag called as the scrotum. Okay, and if it is exposed to too much cold temperature outside, then this dartos muscle will pull the testis upwards and it increases the temperature. So it helps in the regulation, increasing and decreasing the temperature. So that's why the scrotum is very important, which will house the testis outside the body, okay, within this bag called as the scrotum. So did you get the point? Any difficulties here? Okay, then we'll go further. Okay, now going to the main primary organ in case of male, that is the testis. Okay, so if you see, this is the testis here. So the shape of the testis is it is almond shape, and it is in pairs. As I said, there is the right and left, so that's why it is said to be in pairs. Okay, so these are called as gonads. Gonads. Okay, so gonads are nothing but the male and female primary organs. Okay, in case of male it will be called as testis, in case of female it will be called as the ovary. So it is called as the gonads together. So they are paired, almond shape, oval shape, almost oval shape gonads that are suspended in the scrotum by the spermatic cord, and they are suspended by the spermatic cord from above. So it is holding the testis in the scrotum. Okay, this is the spermatic cord. Okay, this whole structure, and this is the testis. What is the volume of the testis? It is about almost 20 to 25 ml, because the sperms will be in a fluid kind of what you can say, the fluid within which the sperms will be moving, and they'll be nourished in the testis. So that's why it is measured in volume. Okay, so it will be almost 20 to 25 ml, and the length of the testis is almost 4 to 5 centimeters long. 4 to 5 centimeters, and the weight is very less, just 10 to 14 grams. 10 to 14 grams. And the function is very important, is This is the main site for spermatogenesis, production of sperms. Testis is the main site for the spermatogenesis. Also, along with this, it also produces a hormone called as testosterone or androgen. Okay, so this testosterone, which will give the male features to the male. So this is separated by the same testis. So spermatogenesis as well as second function is the testosterone. Now coming to the coverings of the testis, as we said, the scrotum will protect this testis. Okay, but this testis itself has its own coverings. So what are the coverings? So there are three layers of coverings for this testis. Okay, so the first one is from outside to inside. It is called as tunica vaginalis, tunica albuginea, as well as the tunica vasculosa. Tunica vaginalis, albuginea, as well as vasculosa. So the outermost covering is a peritoneal extension from the abdomen into the scrotum, because we know that a testis has descended from the abdomen. Actually, the development of the testis is very much high in the abdomen, but it will descend down so that it can regulate the body at the temperature. And the importance I told you, because the spermatogenesis will take place at a much lower temperature than the body temperature. That's why it is descended down into the scrotum. So when it is descending down, it will take a part of the peritoneum. Okay. So this peritoneal covering, this is called as the serous, okay, cavity formed of there are two layers. So one is the parietal layer outside, and the second one is the visceral layer. So there is parietal layer. So this is the parietal layer of the tunica vaginalis, as well as the inner layer that is called as the visceral layer, the part of the peritoneum which is attached to the testis itself, which is directly adherent to the testis, that is called as the visceral layer of the tunic vagina. This is the parietal layer with the white layer, and this pinkish layer is called as the visceral layer. So there are two layers within which there is a small cavity. This is called as the uh, the the serous cavity, within which small quantity of serous fluid will be present. Then it's around the testis and the epidermis. So this cavity, or the serous cavity, not only surround the testis itself, the testis here cut section so that you can see the inner part, as well as even this epidermis. This is the epidermis. So partly even the epidermis is also covered by this the tunica vaginalis. So what is the function of this covering, tunica vaginalis? It allows free movement of testes within the scrotum. So this covering will give free movement for the testes to move within the scrotum. So it is not adherent, so it can freely move within this cavity. Then deep to that, there is a layer called as tunica albuginea. Albuginea means whitish layer. So inside we have a white layer that is called as the tunica albuginea. It is a whitish fibrous capsule. Whitish fibrous capsule. This is called as the tunica albuginea. And inside that there is a vascular layer which will supply the blood to the these the contents within deep inside, that is the seminiferous tubules. So this is called as the tunica vasculosa. Inside the tunica albuginea, it is lined by a thin layer of vascular layer that is called as the tunica vascula. It is a vascular layer of testis consisting of plexus of blood vessels. That's why it is called as vasculosa, because there are plexus of blood vessels held together by delicate areolar tissue, small quantity of fat which will hold these blood vessels. It closes the inner surface of the tunica albuginea. As I said, tunica albuginea is this whitish layer, and this will close inside the tunica albuginea, and different septa in the interior of the gland. So it also, the tunica albuginea also gives septa here. So it will line the septas also. Okay. So this is the three layers: the tunica vaginalis, albuginea, and vasculosa. Here you can see here the outermost covering. This is the skin. Deep to that, you can see the two layers here. Then we have the dartos muscle and the parietal layer, as well as the visceral layer of the tunica vaginalis. So deep to that will we have when we cut, then we can see the tunica albuginea as well as the tunica vasculosa. Now coming to the more details of the inner structure of the testis. Okay, so if you see the inner surface, the cut section of the testis, Then we can see the fibrous septa extending from the capsule. That is, we said the tunica albuginea here, this is the whitish layer, will give septas. It will give septas. Okay, fibrous septa extending from the capsule, dividing the testis into lobules. So between the two septa, the small area is called as lobule. Okay, so there are 200 to 300 lobules, averaging around 250. Okay, average is almost 250 lobules will be present in this each testis. Even though it is a very small cavity, within that there are septa which will be 200 to 300 lobules within that. Okay, each lobule contains 1 to 3 seminiferous tubules. Within this small area, there will be almost 2 to 3 seminiferous tubules within each lobule. Okay, seminiferous tubules, what are these? These are nothing but the sides of the spermatogenesis. They are long tubes where there is spermatogenesis. There are each is almost 60 centimeters coiled tubule. Okay, even though the whole testis is 2 to 3, 3 to 4 centimeters, but each seminiferous tubule is 60 centimeters long. But it is so highly coiled that it can fit into the small area. So 2 to 3 seminiferous tubules can fit into this small area because they are highly coiled tubes. Each is almost 60 centimeters coiled tube. They are the sites for the spermatogenesis. This is the site where the spermatogenesis will be taking place. And they form the bulk of the testicular tissue. As you can see here, all the lobules are filled with this seminiferous tubules and they form the bulk. As you here also you can see here, huge quantity of coiled tubes. These are called as the seminiferous tubules. In between the seminiferous tubules lies the interstitial cells of Leydig which secrete the testosterone. So in between the seminiferous tubules, so these seminiferous tubules will be the site for the spermatogenesis. So where the testosterone is produced by the cells, these are called interstitial cells of Leydig which are in between the seminiferous tubules. In between the seminiferous tubules, there are very small cells called as interstitial cells of Leydig which secrete the testosterone. Then all the seminiferous tubules will come towards the hilum of this testis and they all join together. All these tubules initially they are coiled, they're single long tubes, then they come here near something called as the rete testis where they all join together to form a network that is called as the rete testis. Sperms travel through this testis from the seminiferous tubule from here all the way through a network of ducts called as the rete testis to the epidermis. So they form a network here where all the sperms will come from the seminiferous tubules and trained into this rete testis network of tubules. From there they enter into the epidermis, the head of the epidermis. Now coming to the blood supply of the testis, because this is a very important site for the production of the sperms as well as the hormone, the male hormone, that is the testosterone. So that's why the blood supply of this testis is very important. Coming to the arterial supply, it is supplied by the testicular artery. Testicular artery. So if you see here, testicular artery, this artery coming directly from the abdomen, from the sides, and going all the way up to the scrotum. So this is taking origin at a very high level in near the aorta, because this is the site where actually the testes were present initially during development. So they will be present here. They are developed here. So later they descend down into the scrotum. By birth they have reached already the scrotum. So that's why they are descending. Still the connection of blood supply is still there. So which indicate that the site of origin of this testis. Okay. So they will take this blood all the way from the abdominal aorta. Instead of they are taking from the external internal iliac arteries, it will be coming directly from the abdomen because they have descended from the abdomen. So testicular arteries, which are the branches from the abdominal aorta, will be the main arteries. It arises from the abdominal aorta at the level of L3, L3. Okay, and they descend all the way and supply the testis in the scrotum. Coming to the venous drainage is also very high. Similarly, initially they form a plexus around the testis called as the Pampaniform plexus. So if you can see here there will be plexus around each testis, and they form the plexus called as the pampaniform plexus. Here, if you see here, so this is called as the venous plexus or the pampaniform plexus. Very important. About a dozen of the veins which form a network within the spermatic cord. So they all these plexus form a network of veins, almost a dozen, almost 12, almost around 12 veins will form a network, and they form the pampaniform plexus. They become larger as they approach the inguinal canal to form the testicular vein. So as they go up, passes through the inguinal canal, they form a single vein that is called as a testicular vein. Now see the difference. If you see, the right vein will drain into the inferior vena cava. Right vein drains into inferior. But so see here, the left vein drains into the left renal vein. It doesn't drain into the inferior vena cava. So this will drain into the left renal vein, and from there into the inferior vena cava. This is very important because if you see later when you go to the clinical side, usually because of the backflow of venous blood, because of the backflow, when it will happen whenever the valves don't work competently. So then there is the enlargement of these veins, that is called as the varicose veins. Okay, in case of the testis, they will be called as the varicocele. And if you see the varicocele, it is more common on the left side. Why? Because this vein, testicular vein, drains at right angles, so it has to go against gravity and drain into the inferior, the left renal vein at right angle. But on the right side, it will drain obliquely into the inferior vein, so it can much more easily drain than this one. So that's why there are more varicose veins on the left side of the scrotum. That is called as the varicocele, more common on the left side than the right side. Okay, this is common when you go to the clinical side and see the patients there. Okay, so we should know why it happens. See here, this is the varicocele. This is called a varicocele on the left side, more common compared to the right side. Okay, so we should know the reason. Now coming to the lymphatic drainage, it will be draining into the testicular lymphatics and in the lumbar para-aortic group of lymph nodes, where the artery is there. Beside, just beside that, there will be group of lymph nodes. Those are called as the para-aortic group of lymph nodes. Scrotum, penis, and prepuce will be draining into the terminally into the superficial inguinal group. Even though the testis will drain into the near the aorta, para-aortic, but the scrotum, penis, and prepuce will terminate in the superficial inguinal group. Okay, so this was about the testis. Now we'll go to some other structures. Okay, now we'll talk about a muscle called as the cremaster muscle, very important muscle which is present. This is called as the cremaster muscle. If you see here, this is the cremaster muscle. Okay, what is the importance? This is a small muscle. The cremaster muscle is a thin layer of skeletal muscle found in the inguinal canal and the scrotum between the external and internal layer of the spermatic fascia surrounding the testis and the spermatic cord. So in between the superficial and the deep fascia, you can see a muscle called as the cremastic muscle, and its fascia extending all the way down. Okay, so this cremastic muscle is very important. Why it is important, we'll talk about this. Before that, we'll see the blood supply. Blood supply is by the cremastic artery, which is a branch of the inferior epigastric artery, and the nerve supply, the cremastic muscle is innervated from the genital branch of genitofemoral nerve. Okay, genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve. What is the importance? There is something called as cremastic reflex. Cremastic reflex. So what is the importance of this reflex test? It indication evaluation of the testicular pain in case of the testicular torsion. Testicular torsion is a condition where the testis has rotated. I said the testis can easily freely move in the scrotum because of the serous cavity, but sometimes it can lead to torsion. So twisting and turning will lead to blockage of the artery, and that lead to severe testicular pain. Okay, so in this condition, it is very important. Technique: examine the strokes on the pinches, the skin in the upper medial thigh. So if you see here, the physician will be examining stroking the medial side of the thigh, or if he will pinch on this side, It causes cremastic muscle contraction. It will help in the contraction of the cremastic muscle. What is the observation? Rise of the testicle on the same side. So whenever you stroke on the medial side of the thigh, or on the or pinch on the medial side, then it leads to contraction of the cremastic muscle and it will pull the testis upwards. So here is the cremastic muscle. So whenever it contracts, it will pull the testis upwards. Okay. So what does the interpretation say? Normally it passes with the epidermis. Okay. So this will be normally present along with the epidermis. Okay. Okay. Absence, when it is absent, no testicular rise, when it suggests of the testicular torsion. So whenever there is testicular torsion, then there is absence of this reflex. So almost 50% of boys under the age 30 months where it will be absent. Within 30 months, that is the 2.5 to 2.5 years, almost it is absent in 50% of boys. Okay. Do not use this test under the age of, so that's why less than 2.5 years, children, you should not test. Above that, you can check it. Okay, efficacy, it is test sensitive for testicular torsion, almost 99% it will indicate if there is absence, it might be because of the testicular torsion. So it should be done after the 30 months, that is the 2.5 years. Why this will happen? Why this? When you stroke on the medial side of thigh, there is pulling of this testis. It is because of the nerve called as the genitofemoral nerve, genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve. Okay. So because I said the cremastic muscle is supplied by the genital branch. So if I, as I said, genital branch of the genitofemoral nerve is the nerve supply for this cremastic muscle. So it is the same nerve which will also supply the medial side of the thigh. So when you stroke this, it will sense as though it is coming from here and it will pull the testis upwards. Okay. So sensory is the femoral branch of the genitofemoral nerve as well as the ilioinguinal nerve. Motor is the genital branch. Okay. So stroking will lead to the sensory nerve stimulation and the reflex will be because of the motor nerve. Okay. So here again it has been explained. The reflex is elicited by stroking the ipsilateral inner thigh with a tongue depressor or gloved hand, resulting in the elevation of the testicle through the contraction of the cremastic muscle. So when you stroke here, it will pull the testis upwards. Okay, this was about the testis. Now we'll go to the accessory organs. That is the first important accessory organ will be the epidermis. Epidermis. Okay. It is a single coiled tube. Okay. So if you see here, this is the epidermis. So here you can see this is a much more clear picture. So this is the tunica vaginalis outside, which has a parietal layer and visceral layer. Then we have the tunica albuginea, this white layer, which will be giving the septas inside. Okay, and inside this, the two septa that is called a lobule, there are 1 to 3 seminiferous tubules. So all the seminiferous tubules will join here in the retate testis, form a network, and from there they drain into the head of the epidermis. So what is epidermis? It is single coiled tube. Okay, so it is a single coiled tube. Even though it looks multiple initially, it will be multiple, but all joined together to form a very long tubule called as the epidermis. But again, this is also highly coiled. That's why it fits into a very small cavity. Length is almost 6 meters, almost 6 meters, and the testis is, as we know, it is 3 to 4 centimeters. So this is also fitting into the same area. Okay, almost 4 to 5 centimeters long, but actual length is 6 meters. Okay, but again, as I said before, this it is similar to that of the seminiferous tubule. It is highly coiled. Okay, so even though it is long, it will be fitting into this small area. Site, it is located on the superior and posterior margin of the testis. So it is lying on the superior, near the superior, as well as posterior margin of the testis. This is the anterior, this is the posterior margin of the testis. It is divided into three parts: the head. So this is the head here, head also called as the caput epidermis. Then we have the body called as the corpus epidermis, and the tail called as the cauda epidermis. Okay, so head, body, and the tail. The head receives efferent ductules from the retate testis. As you can see here, this is the retate testis giving many tube efferent ductules. So they all open into the head of the epidermis. Okay. The tail continues with the vas difference, and the tail will continue as the vas difference or the ductus difference. Okay. What is the function of the epidermis? Why there is epidermis? Why we should study this one? Because it will secrete and absorb the nourishing fluid. One is it will give nourishment to the sperms which are carried here, which are produced here, carried all the way up to the epidermis. So it will secrete and absorb the nourishing fluid, which is necessary for the sperms. Then it recycles the damaged spermatozoa. So it also engulfs and removes the damaged spermatozoa, that is the sperms, damaged sperm. The third is it stores spermatozoa up to two weeks to allow for physiological maturation of the sperms. The sperms which are produced in the testes and the seminiferous tubule, still they are not mature. So they will mature here, they will stay here for 2 weeks and they get mature, physiological maturation. So any difficulty still here? So if you have any difficulty still here or any time, you can just stop me and you can ask. Okay, going to the next further, the vas difference. Okay, good. Going to the vas difference. So this is the testis, this is the epidermis. Now we'll continue into this long tube called as the vas difference. So vas difference is a long tube, muscular tube, almost 45 centimeters long, very long tube, which will extend from the scrotum all the way. It enters into the abdominal cavity and opens behind here. So it is a very long tube, muscular tube, 45 centimeter long, carries sperm from the epidermis. So it will be carrying the sperm from the epidermis all the way to the pelvic cavity. So it is coming into the pelvic cavity. To process through the inguinal canal. So when it is passing, it will pass through the inguinal canal. So this is one of the important contents of the inguinal canal as one of the contents of the spermatic cord. It crosses the lower end of the ureter. Now if you see here, it will go behind, it will pass behind the ureters. These are the ureters which are opening into this is the bladder here, kidney are above. So the urine will pass from the kidney into the ureter and from there into the bladder. So this is the bladder. So this vas difference is going behind the ureter. Its terminal part is dilated to form the ampulla of the vas. As you can see here, it will go and it will dilate before it opens. So this is called as the ampulla of vas. Vas difference and the ampulla. Ampulla means dilated part. It joins the duct of the seminal vesicles to form the ejaculatory duct. Behind that, these are the seminal vesicles. So it will join with the seminal vesicle. Okay, and then it joins the duct of the seminal vesicle to form the ejaculatory duct. So it will join with the seminal vesicle to form this is called as the ejaculatory duct, which opens into the prostatic urethra. So this ejaculatory duct will pass through the prostate and then open into this urethra. So this is the urethra. These are the ureters and this is the urethra passing all the way down. So this will open, this ejaculatory duct will open into the urethra, prostatic urethra. Now coming to the accessory glands. Okay, accessory glands. Which are those? One is the seminal vesicle. So you can see here, this is the seminal vesicle. Then we have the prostate as well as the bulbourethral glands. Small glands here called as the bulbourethral glands, also called as the Hooker glands. Okay. So what are the functions of this accessory gland? Why they are present? Because they will secrete the seminal fluid. So they help in the secretion of the seminal fluid. So this seminal fluid will actually nourish the sperms. Okay, sperm. So there will be nourishing the and activation of the sperm. It will help in the nourishing as well as activation of the sperm. And it also, because it is fluid, fluid, so it will be protection of the sperm. So it will, within that, the sperms will float and they are well protected. Okay. So these are the three important functions. One is called one is the secretion of the seminal fluid. Okay, so that's why it is called as the semen, because mainly these are the seminal fluid will present within, with the sperms will be present. So that's why it is called as semen, because it is coming from the seminal fluid. Secretion of the seminal fluid. Second is nourishing and activation of the sperms and the production of the sperm. These are the function of these accessory glands. So we'll go to them one by one. The first is the seminal vesicles. So here you can see here the seminal vesicles. This is the full view and this is the cut section. So these are the vas deferens coming from behind the ureters, behind the bladder. This is the base of the bladder where they are present. Okay. So they are paired elongated glands. So these are the paired elongated, they are on either side. So they are paired. Site located posterior and inferior to the urine bladder. As I said, it will be present posterior near the base of the bladder. Okay, and it lies lateral to the vas deferens. As you can see here, these seminal vesicles are lateral to the vas deferens. Vas deferens is medial. Function: they will secrete almost 60% of the seminal fluid. So that's why these seminal vesicles derive this name to form the seminal fluid, because it is 60% of this fluid is coming. The seminal fluid is coming from the seminal vesicle. That's what it's called as the seminal fluid. Now this the vas deferens and the seminal vesicles will join together to form a duct called as the ejaculatory duct, formed by the union of the lower end of the vas deferens we have seen, as well as the duct of the seminal vesicle. When they join together, then it is called as the ejaculatory duct. It is very short, about 2.5 centimeters long. The two ejaculatory ducts, that is the right and the left, open into the prostatic urethra. So it will open into this is the prostate. So this is ejaculatory duct is present within the prostate and it opens into the prostatic urethra. Okay, on both the sides of the seminal follicles. Okay. Function: what is the function of this ejaculatory duct? They drain the seminal fluid into the prostatic urethra. It will contract and it will release the seminal fluid into the prostatic urethra. Now coming to the very important gland called as the prostatic gland or the prostate gland. Okay, so this is the largest male accessory gland. Among all these accessory glands, this is the largest one, largest accessory gland. It is a fibromuscular glandular tissue. It is a fibromuscular glandular tissue. You see the cut section, this is the cross section of this one where you can see the glandular tissue. The size is almost the size of a walnut. It is located at the neck of the bladder. As you can see, just below the bladder is the prostate. So it is present near the neck of this is the neck of the bladder. Just below that is the prostate. It is pyramidal shape. Again, the apex of that prostate will be below and the base is above. Okay. It is traversed by the prostatic urethra. If you can see here, this is traversed by this is the prostatic urethra. So here is the bladder and it is opening, the bladder is opening into the urethra, and this is the prostatic urethra because it is passing through the prostate, and so this is the prostatic urethra. Here is the bladder and this is the prostate. This is the side view. Okay. It secretes almost 20 to 30% of the seminal fluid. Even though this is the largest of the accessory gland, it will secrete just 20 to 30% of the seminal fluid. The shape is almost conical, cone-like shape. Okay, it has a base, apex, and four surfaces. Base, as I said, it will be near the neck of the bladder, attached to the neck of the urine bladder. Apex rests on the urogenital diaphragm. Here is the urogenital diaphragm. So the apex will lie below. Even the apex should be up. So here it is reverse. So it is apex is below and it is sitting on the urogenital diaphragm. Here is the urogenital diaphragm. Four surfaces, anterior, posterior, and two lateral surfaces, right and left side lateral surfaces. Okay. So what is the function? It secretes enzymes which have the following functions. So it is secreting important enzymes which will have the following function. One is it aid in activating the sperm motility. So this prostatic fluid will be having enzymes which will stimulate the sperms to be motile. So they help in activating the sperm motility. Second is it removes the mucus degradation. It removes the mucus, quantity of mucus. Then the third is it neutralizes the acidity of female reproductive tract, because it is alkaline. So if this prostatic the seminal fluid passes into the female genital tract, it will be acidic and it will kill all the sperms. So this prostatic fluid, which will be alkaline, will neutralize the acidity of the female reproductive tract so that the sperms can be survived. Now coming to the prostatic capsules and relation. This is very important clinically because the prostate has the capacity to hypertrophy as well as go for cancers. Okay. So it has a dense fibrous capsule called as the prostatic capsule, which is surrounded from outside by fibrous prostatic sheath. So outside is covered by a sheath, prostatic sheath. The later is continuous with the puboprostatic part of the levator muscle. So this prostatic capsule or the prostatic sheath outside fibrous capsule is continuous with the puboprostatic part of the levator muscle. Levator muscle will be present here, so it will continue with that. In between the prostatic capsule and the prostatic facial sheath lies the prostatic venous plexus. There is a very important plexus between the, so here you can see here, this is the plexus around the fibrous capsule and this is the prostatic sheath outside. So facial sheath of the prostate and this is the fibrous capsule. In between is the plexus of vein. So that's why whenever you remove the prostate, so it should be removed along with the facial sheath. If not, if you just remove the prostate, then there can be severe bleeding. So to prevent that, it is removed along with the facial sheath. That is the surgical importance. Okay. Coming to the relations, anteriorly we have the pubic symphysis. Okay, so it cannot be approached. Posteriorly we have the rectum. So through the rectum you can feel the prostate. Okay, rectum important for the PR examination. This is very important because after the age, especially after 40 years, it usually undergoes hypertrophy in case of male. Okay, so that's why. So if you want to feel the prostate, anteriorly we have the pubic symphysis, so you cannot feel it. So you have to put the finger through the rectum. This is called as PR examination, per rectal examination, where you feel the prostate. Okay, so whether it is hard, soft, or what. Okay. Then inferiorly we have the urogenital diaphragm. Here inferiorly we have the urogenital diaphragm. Superiorly we have the neck of the bladder, and laterally we have the medial margins of the levator and levator prostate on either side. Okay, so here you can see here the plexus of veins around. Okay, and this is the covering facial sheath either side, and inside we have the prostate. So coming to the, it is divided into 5 lobes according to their relation to the urethra. Just hold on. Okay. The prostatic lobes, the prostate is divided into 5 lobes. There are 5 lobes within the prostate. Okay, the anterior is the large lobe here. This is the anterior lobe, in front of the prostatic urethra, lies anterior to the urethra, prostatic urethra. It is fibromuscular. These lobes are very important because specific lobes go for the hypertrophies, specific lobes go for the carcinoma of the prostate. Okay, so you should know the lobes. Then we have the posterior lobe, posterior to the urethra and inferior to the ejaculatory duct. So here is the ejaculatory duct, just below that this is the posterior lobe. Then we have 2 lateral lobes which can be seen in the previous. So 2 lateral lobes. So these are the 2 lateral lobes on either side. Okay. So on each side of the urethra, and there is a middle or median lobe on the top between the urethra and the ejaculatory. Between the urethra and the ejaculatory, this is called the median lobe. So anterior lobe, posterior lobe, median lobe, and 2 lateral lobes. So the median lobe Usually, it projects into the lumen of the bladder, distorting the internal urethral sphincter after the age of 40, especially after 40 years. This is prone for becoming larger, and then it can distort a sphincter here present that is called as the internal urethral sphincter. The median and two lateral lobes are rich in the glandular tissue. Median as well as the two lateral are rich in the glandular tissue. Coming to the blood supply and lymphatic drainage, the arterial supply is by the inferior vesical artery from the internal iliac artery, so which is going all the, if you see here. So these are the going to the prostate here. Then, so these are the plexus of veins. These are called as the prostatic venous plexus. Prostatic vein around the prostate, the prostatic plexus of veins or the prostatic venous plexus lies between the prostatic fibrous capsule and the prostatic sheath. It drains into the internal iliac vein. It is draining into the internal iliac vein. So here is the internal iliac vein. It is continuous superiorly with the vesical venous plexus of the urinary bladder and posterior to the this plexus. There are many plexuses here. All plexus will drain into this internal iliac vein. Coming to the lymphatic drainage, it will drain into the internal iliac group of lymph nodes. So there is internal iliac artery, just beside that will be the internal iliac group of lymph nodes. Coming to the prostatic urethra, when passing through the prostate, this is how the prostatic urethra will look like. So this is the prostate, glandular tissue you can see here, and this is the prostatic urethra. So it has some specific features which you can observe now. The structure seen on the posterior wall of the prostatic urethra. Okay, so here you can see here this is the prostatic urethra, and there is urethral crust, a longitudinal elevated ridge. So in the center, this is called as the urethral crust in the center, elevated ridge. Prostatic sinus, a groove on each side of the crust. So on each side, this is called as the prostatic sinus. The prostatic gland opens into the prostatic sinus. As you can see here, all these prostatic glands are opening into this sinus called as the prostatic sinus. Then the prostatic utricle, a depression on the summit of the urethral crust. Okay, the ejaculatory duct opens on the sides of the utricle. So on either side, you can see the opening of the ejaculatory duct. Then we have the seminal follicles, a rounded eminence that opens into the prostatic urethra. Okay, seminal follicles. So here you can see there is a seminal follicle. So this is about the prostatic urethra. Then we'll go to the next accessory gland, that is the bulbourethral gland. That is the Cooper's gland. If you can see here, this is the prostatic urethra, this is the prostate, and just below that we can see here these are small glands called the bulbourethral glands or Cooper's gland. They are small paired glands located on the base of the penis. This is the penis here, just at the base of the penis is these glands. Function, they will separate the alkaline mucus for neutralization of the urinary acids, as well as it helps also in the lubrication. Okay. More slides are there. There are 3 more slides. Okay, we'll try to finish. Okay, now coming to the penis. So this is the penis here. Okay, it is the copulatory and excretory gland because it helps in the copulation as well as excretion of the sperms as well as the urine also. Excretory because the penile urethra transmits urine and the seminal fluid. So this is the main structure. So here this is the spongy urethra passing through the corpus callosum, spongiosum, where we can see the spongy urethra, which will be transmitting urine as well as the seminal fluid. Then it has copulatory organ because it has 3 cylindrical masses of erectile tissue. If you can see here, these are called as the corpus cavernosum on either side, and this is the corpus spongiosum. Erectile tissue are mainly the corpus cavernosum. 2 corpus cavernosa on either side, and 1 corpus spongiosum. Through the corpus spongiosum, this urethra will pass. Through the corpus cavernosum, there are a lot of plexus of veins, okay, which will dilate. The corpus cavernosa, which are on either side here, if you can see, these are the corpus cavernosa on either side. The 2 superior right and left masses of primary erectile tissues. These are the main erectile tissues which will help in erection. They provide the majority of the rigidity and length of the penis. So whenever the blood is filled into this, they will give rigidity as well as length to the penis. Their posterior expansion form the 2 crura. So when they go behind, they form the crura crust, right crust and left crust, which form the root of the penis, which will anchor tissue against the pelvic bone. So if you see, the same structure will form the crus, which will anchor the penis. So they are attached to this bone here. Corpus spongiosum is below. This is the corpus spongiosum. This is the single inferior mass secondary erectile tissue because it doesn't help in erection much. So this is the corpus spongiosum, which will transport the urethra. It is traversed by the penile urethra. It is traversed by the penile urethra. Its anti-expansion form the glans penis. So the same structure will come in the front and it form the glans penis here. Its posterior expansion form the bulb of the penis. Behind it will go and form the bulb. Behind it will expand to form the bulb, anteriorly expand to form the glans. Then prepuce or foreskin, the skin which is in front of this gland, that is called as the foreskin or prepuce. Fold of skin covering the glans penis before circumcision. Okay. So during circumcision, this prepuce or the foreskin is removed. Finally, going to the prostatic enlargement. So as I said, there are two types. One is benign as well as malignant. In case of benign, it is usually after 40 years of age, in middle age. So when this will be enlarged. And the malignant, which is called as the prostate carcinoma, which will be seen after the 55 years of age. So these details we will study much more in case of pathology. So I will just avoid going into details. Okay. So this is all about the male reproductive system. If you have any doubts regarding this, you can ask me now. So if you don't have any doubts, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.